Hello everyone, welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask lots of questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, and all the things it takes to help you live the highest quality, most fulfilling life. And I want to welcome my guest, Dr. Janine Crifasi, who's a chiropractor, and she is board eligible, which means for functional neurology, which means that she is going to be sitting for the exam very soon for the American Chiropractic Neurology Board. And your practice is out of deltasperformance.com, and we're going to put that on the screen. Dr. Crifasi is in the New England area, so in Boston, in Cohasset, and Providence, so she covers a pretty big footprint, and she works with Dr. Michael Lovich in tandem. They both do speaking engagements. That's how I met them, and I encourage you to check out the website and visit. And Dr. Lovich is in Denver, yes. So you really get to have lots of opportunities to see them. You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram at Delta S Performance. Before I jump into our conversation, I just want to remind everybody here at the Totally Well Show, we're looking for sponsorships. So if you're a business and you want sponsorship, you want to sponsor our show or any of the shows at the Groton Channel, we certainly appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for you to build community here in Groton and beyond, because we go on demand, so we really go around the world. And it's a great opportunity for us to tell people about your business. And so reach out to www.thegrotonchannel.org or reach out to me and we'll hook you up. So, welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, Joyce.
That was kind of a long spiel there in the beginning. I am so excited to have people get to know about functional neurology, and I know that's where you're sitting for your exam soon and where Dr. Lovich is. And it's such a different approach to dealing with, and also a specialty under chiropractic, right?
Yes. Well, the functional neurology and functional medicine, as long as somebody is able to be a clinical diagnostician, they can sit the program. It's just ours goes by our governing body of being a chiropractor first. It could be a nurse practitioner or, a physical therapist, functional neurologist. So it's just for us, it's following suit with studying the nervous system in the brain, and it was just a natural progression. That's why there's more chiropractic functional neurologists.
It's a very different approach, though, than what I remember, going to for myself when I had needs to deal with a concussion, and I know what functional medicine means because I've worked in the field. Can you describe that for our viewers so they get a better sense of what we're talking about when we talk about functional medicine?
Well, functional medicine is really doing more of a natural approach to remediating some of the common health issues that people have. So it's using more of herbs and vitamins and things like that, modifying diets accordingly. Functional neurology is taking the premise of how the brain works and the clinical applications that go along with a comprehensive examination, getting a sense of what parts of the brain are functioning appropriately, what might need a little bit of support. And in the course of study that Dr. Lovich and I have done through the Carrick Institute of Functional Neurology, we also incorporate the functional medicine piece because it's very important to make sure that you have good sound nutrition so that the cells can be believed to be healthy, to have oxygenation, and then to have activation so that all of the systems that are associated get the opportunity to work at the best ability that they can.
So when somebody comes to see you, they might find someone like you looking for a chiropractor, maybe geographically close, or maybe a condition. It could be lots of different reasons people find us as practitioners. So say I was looking for you for a particular condition. What types of conditions do you think work best under that umbrella of functional neurology?
Well, most commonly what we find is that people look us up for concussions. Is something that when there's a trauma, there's a part of the nerve cell that that gets damaged called the axon. And when the body goes through its natural healing process, and people typically will go to more of an allopathic model, a neurologist or the primary care physician, and then they get their diagnosis, they're sort of just left with that. It's like, okay, you have a concussion. We go and then we take that another step where we're doing a comprehensive examination. We're finding out again which pathways aren't working and trying to integrate them better. For patients that also might seek us out for a neurodegenerative condition like a Parkinsonian syndrome or a multiple sclerosis, those are common ones that have come into our office. From a metabolic standpoint, patients that have hypothyroidism, that they're just tired of being tired all the time. They know there's got to be something else that's out there. Those are other common patient groups and sources that we will get inquiries on our website for. Mm-hmm. The other is very commonly is Lyme and mold, especially in New England where our seasons are moist, to say the least. And there's a greater incidence of being exposed. As we know, it's when patients are affected by something like Lyme, it's not just, the bullseye rash, you feel like you have the flu. At times, that can also get housed in our nervous system. And there's latent effects that can happen from that. Same thing with mold. So those are really the common, that's real broad spectrum. But when people are having issues with their health, that's why we want them to reach out. We don't treat the condition per se. Let me clarify that. We always have to stay within our scope of practice. Mm-hmm. But what we do is we take a really comprehensive history. Mm-hmm. And then we look at the history and then we try to get more information, and people start to realize there's more pieces that may play a part in what your current condition is than the one incident that was just sort of the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Mm-hmm. So when patients reach out on the site, we can find out a little bit more in an examination, in a consultation. We'll then determine if it's somebody that is prudent for us to do a comprehensive exam on. Mm-hmm. When we go through the examination, we're looking at all the different parts of the brain and the nervous system, but particularly the brain, and find out which parts are working appropriately, which ones might have some compromise. Either because there's some level of infection that's gone on in there at some point that might have traumatized it. Was there some sort of a scarring that's happened? Is there a break in how those nerves and blood vessels might be providing their natural supply to the brain? Mm-hmm. And what can we do to remediate that? What kind of steps can we take to make sure that one portion is firing appropriately and letting the other portion of the body and the neuroendocrine and the neuroimmune system, how can we make sure all of those are working together? Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that we choose to do it is to take a look at everything and break it down step by step. So for example, Joyce, somebody comes in and they have like a significant background. Odds are that if there's a concussion, for example, there's a lot of inflammation that is going on or has gone on. And the way
the concussion
itself.
Yeah.
So patient comes in, there was some level of inflammation. Has that inflammation been remediated? Mm-hmm. We have to look at it. We got to put the fire out is how we talk about it, know. So you've got to stop whatever that source is that's happening. Mm-hmm. Then once you get past that, it's like, okay, so we've got that in place. So now we've identified it, we need to extinguish it, okay? You can't build a house while it's still on fire, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes that's where we'll come in and we'll actually get into more of the supplementation and find out what's going on. Are there any other inflammatory factors that are around for them that we need to consider and to work with them with? Then after that, we have to go into what is the rehabilitation for that particular patient. Everything is a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. So when people reach out to us, we can sit down and say, okay, this is what's going to work for you. That's what makes it so much fun for us is, we get a lot of the difficult cases. We get the cases where, in the medical field, everybody's got to stay in their lane. Some fields, all they do is identify it, and that's okay, so you have this or that. There's not that extra step. We go and we do the adaptive activities to get the vestibular system intact, to get the balance systems all put back into a better integration. We do a lot of ocular, visual type exercises, as well as with some patients, we also do need to get them back into a general physical activity. Some people have been, limited in that, either from, for example, a concussion, short term, or sometimes the effects of that can last for years, where people just have never been quite the same since. And for patients that have had multiple concussions, for example, that can have a lingering effect, it can have a cumulative effect, and it can lead to a lot of life-altering, life-changing compromise in one's life. And we try to work with them to get them back to what they are. In order to have a good quality of life, you have to have a good quality of health. And functional neurology and functional medicine is one venue, or two venues really, to bring people back into that I want to thrive. And it's another opportunity. The other thing about our clinic is if for some reason somebody doesn't belong in our clinic, we have no problem referring and helping people find whatever the path might be for them. Functional neurology is not for every single person, for every single condition, but for those that benefit from it, it's life-changing. It's life-changing for the better. Everybody wants to have a better quality of life and a prolonged life. Let's face it. So if this is giving somebody a better option, that's what we want to do, is we want to help people. That's why we're all in this, is to help people to find their own better self.
So it sounds very comprehensive, really looking at the whole person, very individual, personalized medicine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where you really you can't just say, well, I deal with concussion, so I can give you this sheet
right,
of what to do.
But we can give that to them. And when patients do come into our office and we're meeting with them, generally, even the day of the examination, there's some tidbit of something, some activity that we can send them home with. And again, because people have different compromises, because again, it's different parts of the brain have different jobs to do, we have to find ways in which people are going to understand what needs to happen. And that's one of the biggest compliments that we get, is people are very excited that somebody hears them and understands, and that they're not alone in this, and that we can help them, and we help them to understand what got them there. So we sort of work through what we believe the systems that are affected, what the remediation process will be, what they can do at home, and to find that approach that they understand. Some people cognitively get challenged, where saying something to them is like whoosh, right over their head. Other people prefer it written. We'll give somebody a video of us doing the activities we want them to do, or a combination of that, and having a real open door approach with not only our patients, but with other practitioners. We want to work as a team, so that they are going to maximize whatever the results are. So, we co-manage quite often with other neurologists, sometimes even other functional neurologists, because different people have different specialties, and it's about making sure that those of us that have are fortunate enough to have that patient in our office, that we're able to respect them, what their needs are, and to have the resources, just within our own community, and still give somebody other options. At times there's patients that, we will inter-refer because that's where their needs are. And making sure that, as you alluded to earlier on, is it's nice to have a sense of community and to know that you have other people that can help you to help others. And that's why I love being able to be here, is, for people to know that there may be another option for what their health concerns are.
I really love the idea of this team kind of concept, but it feels like the person in the middle of the whole thing is the patient, and that they're as valued a member of the team as anyone else.
They're the most.
Right, and so that's a really refreshing approach to medicine for me. Why I like functional medicine is that I see myself more in collaboration with them and with others to, like, and no, you're not crazy. And I can't see your concussion, at least from, I'm looking at you, this way. There are ways to see things with imaging and so forth, or maybe lab tests. But that idea that I believe you, I know that this is real, and we're going to help you with it. Just that one step alone is so valuable.
Well, and there's science and research that helps to validate that for people too, as well as, like we talked about initially, is a lot of the symptoms of I feel like I'm crazy or I just don't feel right, simply can go back to a metabolic component, whether there was or wasn't a trauma. The world that we live in is stressful, and for people to have an outlet for their stress and an understanding of how they can help themselves. I know that you are a strong proponent of good nutrition and supplementation, and making sure that people have what is right for them can make a big difference in and of itself. So sometimes when patients come to us, what they may end up seeking may only be what gets them through the door, but then we find out that some of their other underlying mechanism is what's really causing some of the symptoms, so we can get them past not only, for example, their concussion and the dizziness or et cetera they may feel with that, but we can help them to overcome some imbalances that might lead to a further pathological or systemic degradation if left unattended. So that's the beauty of doing everything and looking at all of the different systems and how they work based on coming back to how the brain works, because your brain controls everything. Every action, every reaction, every function that happens is based on the interpretation of the information from the body to the brain, from the brain within the brain to the organs and all the systems. So those mechanisms are what we check to make sure that those are intact.
So when you have a patient come in, is it okay if I ask you some questions?
Absolutely,
just about the process?
please do.
So a patient will come in, do you do imaging studies, lab tests, physical assessment? What kinds of, when you say comprehensive evaluation, what's involved in that?
Well, like I said, when patients come, they will pre-provide, usually we speak with them on the phone beforehand, 99% of the time. Then we will get a little bit of a history from that. Then we send them intake paperwork, which they complete online at their convenience. We review that ahead of time. Then when they come in, most of the time, because people don't understand the functional model as well, they usually find us by a default Google search. Fortunately, we've got a lot of referrals from some patients and from some practitioners. So the opportunity to be able to share and let people know that we're out here is huge, because, as you know, the functional model is what is expected to be the trend of the healthcare future. Because,
basically, I'm not so much just your specific process, but just in general, as any practice that does what you do, like what would be a typical thing that a patient would undergo? So more generally speaking, less.
So most of the time, because
does
patients
it involve
come,
blood work? Do people bring that in, or do you actually order tests?
We are certainly capable of ordering any diagnostics that are pertinent. We can order the lab work for patients. We can order MRIs or CTs.
So it depends on the situation?
It does. Oftentimes, because patients haven't known about us beforehand, they usually come in. We're somewhere usually between the 9th and 19th doctor that people see.
Holy smoke.
So by that time, a lot of time has gone by. So they typically will have that. We just recently had a patient who came back with a SPECT scan from the Amen Clinic. Most people do have MRIs or CAT scans for those that with a concussion. Sometimes what happens in the medical world, for example, a patient that might have a thyroid issue, it's not a complete comprehensive lab panel. So we'll go through and we'll discern what their needs are, and we can, again, order more comprehensive tests if need be. And then when they're in our office, we're doing a thorough examination. We do, of course, a musculoskeletal examination. We check the cranial nerves. We check balance and posture. And we make sure that those systems are integrating accordingly. And then based on those findings, we sit down, we review everything, and we find out where there's gaps in the integration of how these systems are working and how that's creating some form of dis-ease in the way the brain is communicating within itself or within the body. 90% of the time, patients come in because they have some sort of a symptom. And then you can't always help the symptom, but you can help the mechanisms and improve the health. Most of the time, the symptoms will reduce, or at times they will go away. But again, we try to work the systems. Oftentimes it will help to reduce the symptom that somebody has. But
so we have about 8 minutes left,
Sure.
7 or 8 minutes left, and I thought maybe it'd be fun to get into like a little case study of what. So what I might see as as a coach, as a functional nutrition coach, and if we were working together with a patient around concussion.
Sure.
So in this particular case, a young woman who was playing soccer had multiple concussions. So what you said earlier was striking because she's not going to play soccer anymore. So lifestyle change, big lifestyle change, identity. She's been since she was a little girl.
Right.
So that's one thing she's dealing with. Really not any weight issues, although a little weight gain since she's not as active, and has some symptoms, headache, light sensitivity, and things that are making her not be as engaged with the world.
Right.
So now she's more in a funk, that kind of thing. I won't call it depression, but kind of in a funk. But also some acid reflux and so I'm like thinking, how can I help her heal from concussion and help support the healing of her concussion? So she's seeing a practitioner for that. I'm not her practitioner for that. But my thought was to simplify. Let's find out, maybe there was some pre-existing condition that wasn't really bugging her, but maybe the reflux was kind of a clue that maybe she's eating a lot of bread and things
Could
like
be.
that. So anyway, my approach was to really simplify and take out the things I think are the most inflammatory foods, and maybe give her some simple some supplements that might help quiet the inflammation. That was my thinking. So what are your thoughts on someone like that? Like, how would you want to support it through nutrition and lifestyle?
Absolutely. The top 4 things that I would suggest to take out of her diet would be gluten and dairy. Those are very hard to digest, and particularly gluten. There's a condition called cerebellar ataxia, which is very common. There can be a gluten mimicry that happens. So sometimes when the body sees something that's similar to gluten in how it's designed, or the gluten itself, the body starts to attack it, and it can sort of trigger an autoimmune response. If the people have it in their diet and there's something that looks similar to it, the brain will start to attack it. A very common symptom that people have is brain fog and a little bit of being in a funk when they have gluten and dairy. Corn and soy is the other thing, where corn does have some nutritional value, but it's, again, like with everything else in the United States, there's a lot of the pesticides that are on it that can be leading to some toxicity that we don't necessarily need. So taking corn out of the diet, which is sort of a food group we don't really need that much, and don't digest exceptionally well, that would be something else I would suggest for her. And soy is an excitotoxin, and that will cause the brain to swell a little bit, which can be contributing to some patients and their headaches. The other thing that I would suggest too is making sure she has a really decent protein, carbohydrate, healthy fat diet, as well as omegas, making sure that she's got good omega-3s and 6s. Checking her vitamin B levels is another consideration. Everybody knows vitamin B12, there's B6, there's B3. And B3, I was just reading a study this weekend actually that talks about how for a lot of musculoskeletal symptoms, upping B3 is better than some of the over-the-counter things. Now, it's not what's right or wrong, but it is another option that might help to support her. Vitamin Bs have a lot to do with certain systems in the body, so that's another consideration. Resveratrol is another substance to help kind of calm things down. Everybody knows about turmeric, that's made on the news. I have some friends that, try to make their own turmeric paste. You have to be really careful about some of the supplementation that you take, why it's important to come to somebody like yourself that understands this better, because you need to make sure when you're taking a product that it's a well-made product and that your body can easily assimilate it. Now, if she's having acid reflux, it may be that her body isn't able to absorb things. And again, when the brain isn't firing right, those junctions that should be nice and tight, just like when a nerve is affected and everybody knows the arm doesn't move as well, it could be causing her to not digest things
So
very
and you're
well.
talking about in the small intestine where the tight junctions or leaky gut.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And by the way, her reflux is gone already. I told her that would probably happen within 2 weeks if she did, and basically what you're suggesting, plus reduce sugar, because it was also a sugar issue.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's gone already. And I said to her, I think the other symptoms will happen within a month. You'll start to notice. They'll take longer because they were fairly severe. So we're hoping it's been 2 weeks, but
Good.
so far she's on track a
So
little
it sounds
bit
like she's on a
better.
great trajectory. So,
Yeah.
and she has a great coach. So.
Oh, thanks. So a good form of turmeric that is absorbable in a
Right.
way, because I know there are different substances even that they put black pepper or fennel or the curcumin oil,
Yeah,
right? The different.
yeah.
So if you're on a blood pressure medicine or something else, it could potentiate that other medicine as well. So you got to be
Right.
kind of fussy about how you're consuming it, and you can't
Absolutely.
just spread turmeric on your.
No, you can, but you have to have
It
the
doesn't
oil.
give you the therapeutic dosage.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you always want, the minimal therapeutic dose to make it effective. That's what the objective always is.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's plenty of options that are
What
out
about
there.
magnesium?
Magnesium, absolutely.
And a particular form in that case? Would you do the 3 and 8? Would you?
Yeah,
do,
I prefer the 3 and 8 because it does cover different parts of the of the brain and how it functions, which makes it much more effective. So it's covering bases that you may not know need it, and it helps to keep some of the pathways intact. So absolutely, but magnesium is imperative when it comes to healing the gut as well. So, great.
So well, that's really helpful information. And just in general, in supporting, giving the body what it needs to do its own healing process. The more that I study and learn, the less I feel I know. Do you ever get to that?
Yes, always.
Yeah, and so I'm like, well, what if we just put more faith in the body's ability to heal and not continue to add known toxins, and make sure there's not something just coincidental going on. Like maybe you also have Lyme or also have mold, or maybe you had like low-level inflammation prior to, and now it's, everything's messed up, and now you've created a leaky gut situation from the trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exacerbations will do that. They'll bring those subclinical things up in fury.
Exacerbations, that's a
So-
good term to remember, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's important to look at all of the different systems like you are. You just didn't go, oh, you have acid reflux, let me do that. You started thinking about what else is going on. The first thing you said is she was an athlete, so you know where her psychology is. But
Yeah.
you also, were thoughtful enough to go, okay, she's a kid, so where's her sugar levels? So
Yeah, Nutella. Of course. Well, very quickly, I have about a minute left, and I'm curious to hear what are the top 3 things it takes for you to be totally well.
Well, I tell you, the first thing is good nutrition, being active, and being joyful.
Joyful, yeah.
It's if you're not joyful and you're not enjoying what you're doing, you've got to change it.
Yeah.
So
Through good and bad, they can all bring joy.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
for inviting
Crifasi. I
me.
really appreciated learning from you. Will you come back and visit again?
Certainly, I would be happy
I think
to.
we can dive deep in some specific subjects and really have a lot of fun.
Perfect. Anytime. Thank
Yeah,
you.
All right, thank you.